We're going to look back on the death of Rayshard Brooks, now 5 years removed. We're going to talk to his widow about how she continues to grieve and what she hopes her husband's legacy will be. Also, Georgia Power wants to develop 2 projects in one metro Atlanta neighborhood, but the folks there are saying not so fast. We're going to bring in their city councilman to discuss the project. And we're going to look at why our area is bucking the trend when it comes to an overall sluggish national economy. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We invite the experts in to share their take as well on today's top stories, and we try to have just a little bit of fun as well. We'll start you off with this morning. 5 years ago today, Rayshard Brooks was shot and killed by Atlanta police after a DUI stop escalated into a deadly struggle in the parking lot of a Wendy's on University Avenue. His death, caught on camera, sparked violent protests across the city. In 2022, the city of Atlanta agreed to a $1 million wrongful death lawsuit settlement with the Brooks family. Here now to talk more about the death of Rayshard Brooks is his widow, Tamika Miller. Good morning to you, Tamika.
Good morning.
Welcome to the show. Hey, we're so appreciative of you coming on the show to talk about this. We know that it's been at least 5 years. How is your family still coping and dealing with this death over the last 5 years?
Actually, it still feels like the first day I first heard it. Things have been still rocky, but we're getting through. As my daughters get older, it's really hard for them to continue processing. They'll never see their dad again.
Now, how old were your daughters when this took place?
Blessing was actually yesterday she turned 13. So 5 years from now, that's how old she was.
And I know, I understand. And how do you, for somebody out there who may be going through the same thing you go through, how do you deal with that? How do you talk to your kids about what took place?
I get a lot of therapy and counseling. It's hard to deal with every day. It's hard to even talk about sometimes. I try to keep my phone away from my oldest daughter and electronics away from her so that she doesn't replay those events or see the tragedy that happened to her father. Yeah,
I hate to try to take you back, but if we go back to that particular time, when this took place, all the emotion of the community getting involved, how did that make you feel?
It made me feel very supported, as if the community was there for me and we were going to get something going where policing would be changed and youth would be helped to not fear the police anymore, which I'm still looking out for, those members who are in the community protesting to come back together, and we get that Wendy's to be a peace center, instead of just a wooded area or another apartment complex.
Yeah. The 2 officers that were charged, but the charges were dropped against them. When that happened, did that affect your view of the justice system at all?
Of course it did. It really let me down. I was baffled. I didn't expect for the charges to be dropped or, him just walk away scot-free. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What message would you give to leaders and law officials today about the incident?
Let's not forget about this situation, and let's rise to the top and do what we promised the Brooks family, and that was to, get together, change the way policing would be, change the way the community would react to policing, and get that peace center built.
Yeah. Have you been drawn to any advocacy work in the community as of late? Are you doing anything in that regard?
Yeah, I actually work with the Astra Project and do a lot of different things. I go out to events where some of the family, we had a lot of different incidents go on with still a lot of police brutality, and I get together with those families with the Astra Project and different things, the organizations, and we just come together and support each other and still do things. I still do things. 2 years ago, I did a back to school drive and a Christmas drive. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm still out in the community working. Yeah.
Tell us about Rayshard. Tell us about how he lived, more so less about how he died, but how he lived.
He lived his life free, just always protective of his family, working hard, trying to stay away from the law enforcement. He never wanted to go back to jail because he wanted to be here for me and his kids. to prove that he could be a better man than what he was.
Yeah. What would he be saying today, given all that has happening, especially in that particular time of his death? What would he say today?
Well, Chesley, I can't tell you what he'd say today because he's not here.
Good point. Good point. The way things are today, what would you say? How are you feeling today, 5 years later after this?
That's a better question. I can tell you how I feel.
Absolutely.
5 years today, I would say that I would like to see people stick to their word and just really not forget about the fact of the promises that were made, not just to me, but to a lot of other families who still dealing with police brutality and unjust situations from law enforcement and community, period. I want to see change. I want to see people stick. I don't want to see you walk away 2 years later and say, hey, we did our part. We stood up, but we're not still standing with them.
Absolutely. Very good point. Really appreciate you joining us, Tamika Miller. We are with you, so that you know that. Still praying for you and your family. 5 years later, certainly still feeling the impacts from that and raising your children. Best of wishes to you and your family.
Thanks so much, Chesley.
Thank you for joining us. All right. All right, folks, let's take a look at our forecast for today. It is going to be a warm one, of course. We're going to look at temperatures today in the middle 80s, and that's the way it's going to stay for the next couple of days, as a matter of fact. Now, when you factor in the humidity, of course, it's going to feel a lot warmer out there. And I'm saying the humidity because some of that moist air is starting to move back into our forecast area. You couple that with the heating, that's when you get those thunderstorms popping up in the forecast area. And just added to our forecast today, and just about an hour ago, the Storm Prediction Center has decided to put us a level 1 threat for severe weather. Now, that means isolated strong to severe thunderstorms are possible. Can't tell you exactly where those will break out area wide. We'll see these scattered thunderstorms around. So you want to be prepared, folks, and make sure that you have alerts bringing right to your phone. I know a lot of you have baseball practice and soccer practice this afternoon for the kids. You want to make sure that if you can hear thunder, even if you don't have any storms over you right now, if you can hear thunder, you can be struck by lightning. So go ahead and seek shelter. It's going to be this way for the rest of the week. Hey, we'll be back right after this. Well, the White House is doubling down on the need for Marines and National Guardsmen in Los Angeles as ICE raid protests continue there and across the nation. NBC's Chris Pallone joins us now from Washington, D.C. And Chris, what are you hearing from the White House now about these raids?
Yeah, Chesley, they basically continuing the same line that they've been using all week, that this was absolutely necessary for President Trump to go above state and local officials and send in thousands of military members. Just last night, the president was at the Kennedy Center, and he reiterated that that the city would be burning, in his words, if he hadn't done this. And again this morning, he wrote on Truth Social that Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, should be thanking the president for saving his city. Now, some context. It's a very small portion of downtown Los Angeles where these protests have been taking place. There have been continued skirmishes between police. You saw over the weekend there were cars burned and officers were pelted with pieces of concrete. They had fireworks shot at them. And so it's a bad scene, but life continues in most of Los Angeles around this. And many people don't even realize that it's going on unless they see it on television. So the president continues to assert that he saved the city of Los Angeles from burning, but it's really a very small portion of downtown where this is where all of this has been going on, Chesley. Has the local law enforcement responded to this and their feelings about this? Yeah, they're walking a fine line. You know, the police chief and the head of the county sheriff's department have basically said that they don't really have much interaction with the National Guard, and they're waiting to see what these Marines do. You know, but the president has asserted that the police would not be able to take care of this on their own. And obviously there are thousands and thousands of police officers compared to hundreds to thousands of protesters, depending on how big the protest is going, that officials out there are certainly confident in their ability to handle protests of this size, but at the same time don't want to insult military members who are coming there, you know, basically on orders. They don't have a choice of whether they're there or not. So the police leaders are certainly walking a fine line of saying, hey, we understand these people are here, they're on orders, but they're confident in their ability to take care of these protests without the military being there.
Yeah, we heard the mayor claim that this is a little bit overreaching, a little bit there. So I was asking him if the authorities there kind of felt like she felt, or are they just backing the president? But you're saying they're walking the line with it.
Yeah. Yeah, they certainly are. They have to, all the respect in the world between the police and the military members. They're all kind of caught in the situation where they're being directed what to do by politicians, essentially. So they're walking that fine line. But make no mistake, the county and city police departments believe they have the resources necessary to take care of the problem without the military being there.
Got it. All right. All this happening ahead of a major parade there in Washington, D.C., where you are, and several lawmakers across party lines are criticizing the timing of the military buildup. Is this being seen as a distraction or a part of a broader political strategy?
Some of the president's closest allies in the Republican Party say they think it's great. They're celebrating the pretext of this is there's going to be a festival and then a parade at night celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Army. And they say it's certainly good to celebrate the fact that the Army has been, guarding this country for 250 years. But at the same time, there are people in the president's party, Republicans, who say with a price tag up to $45 million, they feel like the money could be better spent. People worry that this military parade will look like something that we see in authoritarian nations like Russia or North Korea, with tanks rolling through the streets of an American city. So there are certainly people on both sides of the aisle who worry about the optics and the price tag. And then there are others who say, hey, what's the harm?
Real quickly, is it a pretty hefty price tag we're talking about?
They're talking anywhere from 25 to 40 on the higher end, $45 million. They've budgeted $16 million to repair the streets if necessary, because these tanks are really heavy and can damage Constitution Avenue where they roll out. So, it can get pretty pricey.
Gotcha. All right, Chris Pallone in Washington, D.C., really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, plenty more stories coming up. This is The Take. We're back right after this. Well, welcome back to the show. We got folks in Vine City are upset at Georgia Power over two planned projects which they feel is too much of an encroachment. Now, their city council member, Brian Amos, is looking for answers at least. And Councilman Amos joins us now this morning. Good morning to you, Councilman Amos.
Good morning. How are you doing today, sir?
Pretty good. Welcome to the show. First of all, let's talk about these two projects. You got a planned substation in Vine City and then a high voltage transformation lines going up at Howell Station. What do you know about them and what are people saying about them?
Well, unfortunately, I know more about power than I ever wanted to know. Thank you for giving the opportunity for the voices of these communities to be heard, because these are the voices that Georgia Power is simply not listening to. When we start about the high power voltage lines in Howell Station community, they are actually running them behind people's houses. People that bought their property with a protective tree line between them and the jail, because they sit right next to the jail. Fulton County gave Georgia Power easement to come in, clear cut trees, run these high power voltage lines with no type of community engagement at all. When it comes to Vine City, Georgia Power would like to build another substation. That would be the second one for the neighborhood in Vine City, less than a half a mile apart, and neither one of these will actually service the people in Vine City, English Avenue. So there's a lot of questions that need to be asked about these particular projects.
You talked to, obviously, the folks in that neighborhood, and they're saying they don't want this at all. How are you going to ensure them that something could be done?
And that's what we're fighting now. And it involves a lot, everything from state law to the powers of eminent domain that was actually used in the Vine City area. It goes to county easements and things of that nature. So educating the public on how to fight, and they have actually been educating each other and myself. But it all starts with Georgia Power. Georgia Power is saying they're having community conversations. I think we all can agree community conversations don't start with this project is going to be built and there's nothing you can do about it. Let's talk about the rest. Yeah. That's the feeling that the community has been able to get in both neighborhoods from Georgia Power. So I wish the leadership of Georgia Power would meet with the community, hear their concerns. They have even offered some alternatives, and just hear the people out to see if we can make a better outcome for everybody involved.
Gotcha. Regarding the substation, we talked to a Georgia Power representative. I want you to take a listen, all right? Here you go.
We understand that most customers do not want to have electrical infrastructure near their homes or in their neighborhoods, but we also know that everyone wants reliable and affordable service. And this project is aimed at delivering on that commitment to ensure that it benefits thousands of both business and residential customers that reside in the area.
Councilman Amos, give us your take on that.
You know, I'm glad that was played because this second substation will be built for future development, and mainly the way the power lines will be ran underground will go to the gulch. There's plenty undeveloped industrial land around the gulch now. If it is for that purpose, build it there. They're actually running the power lines past locations in which has been said they looked at and turned down. If that is not a good location, why are you running the power lines back to them? And plus, aren't we their customers as well? Everyone in Atlanta pays the Georgia Power bill. So no customer base should have the feeling of taking the brunt of everyone else being developed. There'll be 2 substations in this community, and this community benefits from neither one of them. So there's, like I said, a lot of conversation that needs to be had around Georgia Power and their decision making. Yeah.
Lastly, let me just get your, what do you think the chances are that Georgia Power will reconsider this?
You know, because they have eminent domain laws and pretty much state laws, I'm tugging on the heartstrings. And I know it's about business, but at the end of the day, we're still customers of Georgia Power as well. To have a true and honest conversation. I have possibilities and alternate places they can build this substation. They can either bury the power lines in the Howell Station community. When it comes down to cost, and that's what they say it mostly comes down to an economic decision, you have a multi-billion-dollar company in which profits are into the millions, if not close to the billions as well. You have charged the taxpayers a high increase every year of their power bills. Sit down with us. If it costs you a little bit more money to save the lives of people, let's do that.
Yeah. All right, Councilman Amos, on the case. Really appreciate your insight, and thank you for joining us, okay?
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
All right, take care now. All right, plenty more stories ahead, folks. You don't want to miss it. This is The Take. We're back right after this. Welcome back to the show. Right now, many people are still cleaning up after another round of powerful storms over the weekend. We found trees toppled on homes and cars and down power lines across much of the state, the Peach State. And the storm did kill a 56-year-old man in Banks County when a tree fell on his car while he was driving along the highway. Joining us more to talk about this is Keith Spillman. He is the meteorologist in charge at the National Weather Service in Peachtree City, friend of the show. Hey, Keith, how you doing?
Hey, good morning, Chesley.
All right. I'm doing pretty good. Talk to us about these storms that we had over the weekend.
Yeah, so it was just a situation where we had enough upper level energy and energy in the atmosphere that set us up for a pretty windy and gusty day with a strong line of storms that came through.
There was a lot of trees toppled over. A lot of people probably thinking it was a tornado that moved through their area, but that's not what you guys were seeing, right?
So we went out and surveyed, and we started in Pickens County and worked. There was one particular storm that was a little bit stronger than most. It worked from Pickens County all the way to Banks County. It was actually part of the reason why we had the fatality in Banks, or part of that reason. What we found was there was about a mile to mile and a half wide swath of damage along that path from Pickens all the way to Banks. And it was part of, you could see it on radar, it was a pretty potent line of storms. What was happening was we were getting microbursts and downbursts to occur within that line as it was traversing east. And when those microbursts were occurring, it was causing like swaths of trees to go down and get snapped, much in the way that a EF1 tornado would look when you're on the ground.
Explain to us what a microburst is. I know a lot of folks out there saying microburst, tornado. What's the difference?
Sure. So there's a little more. There's wind. There's stronger winds off the surface, and they're feeding that line of storms as it's surging east from the west. So they're filling in the backside of this line of storms, and those winds are getting pulled down to the ground in spurts or like pulses. And when those winds get surged down to the ground, they hit the ground. It's an analogy or way you visualize it would be like taking a bucket of water and dumping it on the ground. And if you're underneath that point where that bucket of water is hitting the ground, that's what it looks like, but on a much bigger scale in the atmosphere.
And you get those trees toppling over, and yeah, for a lot of folks, residents, they're probably thinking, wow, a tornado moved through, but they're actually just wind damage from those microbursts.
A lot of microbursts that were, they're causing a lot of tree damage.
We are now entering into a pattern where we're going to see some scattered thunderstorms almost each and every afternoon, the rest of this week, all the way to the weekend. Could we see more of those microbursts, or are we free from that?
Well, it's going to depend. There's actually two different types of microbursts. There's a dry microburst, there's a wet microburst. As moist as the atmosphere is getting, if we get into an unstable situation where the atmosphere gets really unstable during the day, we set up a possibility for some wet microbursts, given how moist we're going to be. But I think the chances of seeing those are a lot less with this next round of afternoon and evening thunderstorms than what we saw last weekend.
Gotcha. I know you guys follow the Storm Prediction Center. They just put a level 1 threat for severe weather over us not long ago here. What are they seeing now with these storms that may pop up this afternoon?
More in line with the typical summertime stuff, and we do get the pulse, like severe thunderstorms, where we'll get an occasional low-end microburst, I'll say, or a wet downburst with these types of thunderstorms. And I think that's really the primary risk that we're going to see with these. So a tree or two down, but nothing like what we saw over the weekend.
Gotcha. I know the last time we talked about our severe weather season kind of stretching out a little longer than what we're used to. This would be more part of the summer type variety, as you mentioned, or is this a part of this severe season that's just kind of been stretched out?
Unfortunately, it just happens to be part of this severe season that we can't shake. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that typically the Bermuda High and our typical summertime pattern has set up by now in most summers, and it just hasn't at this point. And so we're still like teetering on that end of spring phase where we're still a little bit of jet energy, a little bit more energy in the atmosphere still over us because the ridge hasn't established yet. So as a result of that, we have a little bit more of a severe season.
Yeah. So you pick your poison, right? We have to deal with that, or that heat and the humidity.
Yeah. It's either highs in the 80s and some rain, or the heat and the humidity and dog days of summer.
Well, I always tell you, man, we really appreciate all that you guys do to help keep us safe. And I know we partner up trying to get the word out as far as any severe weather coming into the area. And then you guys go out and you have to check. Hey, real quick, one more question. When you guys go out, explain this again to people. What is it that you're looking for when you're looking for tornado damage?
So in a lot of times it can be intertwined, but it look very confusing. When we go look for tornado damage, in fact, this most recent case, I surveyed extensively up near Lake Lanier. Mm-hmm. One of the things that stood out to me was when you start plotting the damage. Now, if you get away from this is my house, this is my neighbor's house, and it looks like a tornado ripped through, and you start plotting the direction of those trees, and then I go the next street over and I start plotting the direction of those trees, you start to see a spreading out pattern. So the way if you just look at your hand and spread your fingers, the trees were laid out in the direction that your fingers are facing. When you start plotting that information, and that sort of points back to a small microburst that occurred near some origin point, and you get the spreading out of those trees. In a tornado path, especially a stronger one, not a weaker tornado path, you'll see the trees actually point inward toward the center of the tornado path, so you get more of a convergent path in a tornado.
Gotcha. All right, again, appreciate what you do. Keith, thanks for joining us today. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. All right, remember the latest weather information updates. You can all get it right there on our streaming platform right here on 11Alive Plus. Of course, we have in-depth weather discussions, extended weather forecasts. Check us out, Weather Impact 24/7 right here on 11Alive Plus. Don't go anywhere, folks. We got much more for you coming up right after the break. All right, welcome back. Recently, 11Alive received a tip from an Atlanta traveler from you're looking at the Hartsfield-Jackson airport right now, and what we're talking about is each day about more than 250,000 people make their way to and from Hartsfield-Jackson airport. You get off the flight and you go into the garage, you want to go to your car. But we received a tip from an Atlanta traveler returning from a trip where she found her vehicle missing from the parking deck and is now sharing a warning with our consumers, investigator Eliza Lucas. And she's been following up on this spike in auto thefts from last year. Eliza, how devastating is it for you to get off a flight, right? If you've been on a long flight, maybe you get off and your car is missing. Talk to us about this.
Well, you'd be in disbelief, right? Sometimes you may be familiar with some of our coverage. As you mentioned, there was a spike in auto thefts last year. Police talked about it. We covered it here on 11Alive, but you never really happened to you, really think it's going to happen to you, according to Lindsay, who we talked to. Now, Atlanta police, though, did give us the latest data. And as of May 31st, 81 vehicles have been reported stolen from the airport property this year. Compared that to 159 vehicles by the same time last year. So what are we looking at right now? About a 50% drop in this type of crime. But of course, if you're one of those who was still a victim, like Lindsay, it's still one too many happening. Take a listen.
I have heard of it happening at the airport, but I just thought it was like super luxury cars and just like Bentleys and Lamborghinis, and I didn't think it would be my Cadillac, my family car, which I need to fit, you know, all of our kids and their friends. And if I would have gone and Googled and realized that the level of number of cars that are leaving this airport, I would have never considered parking here.
Now, unfortunately, Lindsay's car also serves as her mobile office, and that just added to the headache and the harm in this situation. She parked the car in the South Daily lot on May 15th, and we got to look at the police report. That report shows no exit time for her vehicle, Chesley, and something else that brought up some questions for me. The report states, quote, no cameras can be located inside of the parking deck level 2. And we definitely pressed the airport officials about that.
What? Okay. Whoa. Yeah, I have a lot of questions about this. No level 2 cameras, right? So, you know, how do they rectify this? I mean, I'm baffled.
Well, I have to say they didn't directly answer our questions. They had previously in a separate email told me that they have parking cameras, surveillance across the parking areas. And then when I asked, is there a potential blind spot in Lindsay's case where she parked, or maybe there's some other context here. Maybe there was a problem with the footage and they couldn't access the cameras. Maybe it was just the wording of the reports. Again, I didn't get a direct answer. They just emphasized that security, of course, is the top priority. But we had a lot of questions about this, and we're going to continue to ask.
Are they giving any tips for people wanting to park their cars now at the airport with these numbers? I mean, what are they saying to us?
Well, we have to keep in mind that there has been a drop, and a significant one, and keep in mind the full picture here. More than 30,000 parking spaces at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. I mean, you mentioned right off the top the number of people that are flying to and fro daily. So when we talk about 81 thefts this year, that is a very small percentage. And the airport pointed to that, and they said this coordination of efforts between APD, airport staff, their parking contractor, that's all led to that drop. But as you mentioned, for tips, if you are hearing Lindsay's story and you're concerned about how to protect yourself, well, APD says one thing right away: clean car, clean car. Don't leave anything of value in sight. They say don't even cover something that's not valuable with a jacket. You know, sometimes we just toss it down on the floorboard. That can just indicate to a would-be thief that something of value is there. And even remove your parking ticket, because if someone does target your car, that gives them an easier way to get out, Chesley.
Liza, you got me on this one. You got me on this one. Wow, we will be watching. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate that. We're going to be watching for your full investigation tonight on 11 Live right here at 6 o'clock and on 11 Live Plus. Man, tune in for that one. All right, from the struggles to success, the Eastlake Foundation was founded in 1995 and since then has worked to transform the community from the crime-ridden, neglected area to a thriving mixed-income neighborhood. Here to talk more about it is 11Alive. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, 30 years ago, Eastlake was called one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the city. What are the first key steps that really made a difference here?
So I think one of the big steps was, Miss Eva Davis. She was a longtime resident of what was then Eastlake Meadows, now Villages of Eastlake, coming together with real estate developer and philanthropist Tom Cousins to reimagine a community, a thriving community. There were great families here. There were people that wanted to do well, but they just did not have the resources. So these two unlikely allies, who later became great friends, reimagined what Eastlake could be, in partnership with the Atlanta Housing Authority, and at the time, Renee Glover was running that organization.
Mm-hmm. Nice. How has the foundation balanced the revitalization with preventing displacement or ensuring longtime residents aren't being left behind?
So the Eastlake Foundation serves as the community collaborator, connector, and convener. Everything we do here is resident-centered, resident-focused. So we make sure that we have enough land that the foundation helps support. We establish pathways to prosperity for our families through home ownership. And so for us, our goal is to always keep our legacy families for generations and generations to come here in Eastlake if they choose to. And so for the foundation, we work very closely with our education partners, with our housing partners, with our economic vitality partners to make sure people can live. It's place-based work. They can stay in place if they choose, and we help provide the resources and support for that.
Yeah, the model for Eastlake has been replicated in other cities. What makes it work? Like, what are the challenges that you have to get through?
So it's been replicated through our partnership with Purpose-Built Communities. So there are 25 plus neighborhoods across the country who are looking at this transformative model, and they're in different stages. And so how are we sustainable is a big question. It's the people, right? The menu, the recipe is not that complicated. If you lead with residents first, and that's how we started, you bring in the right partners that share the same values that we share. That's how it have the great leadership that I get the privilege of working with and a great board. That's how you not only are successful, but you are sustainable. And so lead with the people first, lead with your heart, lead with vision and goals, and you will thrive.
All right. Education has been a major focus here, I understand, from early childhood education all the way up to high school. How has that long-term investment changed the outcome for families?
So this is a marathon, not a sprint. So, 30 years ago, our neighborhood had a 30% graduation rate. Our school, through our early education all the way through high school, we have an average of 98% of our students graduate from Jew Charter School. And so how does that happen? Holistic wraparound support as for families, for students, for grandparents and caregivers. And so we are ingrained in everything that happens in a child's life here, and we provide the resources support for them. So it's a marathon, not a sprint, and it's generation after generation that are benefiting from the work that we do as a collective community.
Iliaskia, you're making our community better. You're making our community better. Really appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Chesney.
All right, take care now. Plenty more stories ahead for you folks. This is The Take. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back to the show. We're getting a new look at inflation numbers that could reshape what the Federal Reserve does next. CNN's Maribel Aber joins us now from the NASDAQ market site in New York. Maribel, good morning to you. Those numbers may also hint at how much longer Americans will feel the pinch, right?
Good morning, Chesley. That's right. Now, we did get some good news on prices. They rose less than expected in May. This latest report on inflation shows tariffs haven't had a significant impact on the economy at the moment. The consumer price index was up just 0.1% for the month. A gain of 0.2 was forecast by economists. And some economists believe retailers may not have passed along higher costs just yet because consumer demand is weak. The report also showed the annual rate of inflation was 2.4%, and that was right in line with expectations. So for months, businesses have been saying, hey, they're going to have to raise prices due to tariffs. This report now has some wondering if there will be a broader spike in prices and when it will hit. Last month, we did see increases in major appliances and auto parts, but prices on jewelry, smartphones, and new cars dropped. So, Chesley, it's kind of like we're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Mm-hmm. All right, the sharp jump in prices at the pump may be on the horizon, and it's tied to more than just supply and demand, right?
Yeah, we did see a big spike in oil prices yesterday on rising tensions between the U.S. and Iran. The jump came after President Trump expressed doubt the two countries will reach a deal regarding Iran's nuclear program. Now, he also said that some U.S. personnel were being moved out of the Middle East because it, quote, could be a dangerous place. Now, all this rising tension has led to growing concerns that oil supply could be disrupted. Yesterday, the U.S. benchmark oil was up 4.9%. It settled at $68.15 a barrel on supply worries. The prices have come down a bit in early trading this morning. Oil has been lower by about 1%. So we'll have to watch oil to see if it climbs in the days ahead, which could lead to higher prices at the pump. And oil, by the way, is down from earlier this year. It was $80 a barrel in mid-January. This morning, it's below 67, Chesley.
Yeah, a lot of frustration when you own your own home, but there's something now that tops the list that people might not expect, right?
Well, it's a big factor and regret some people have about buying their home. Overall, 45% of all homeowners have regrets about buying their current home, according to the survey from Bankrate. Now, the most common complaint was the cost of maintenance and hidden fees in owning the property. A typical homeowner is spending more than $18,000 a year on non-mortgage related expenses, according to the survey. Those fees can be anything from property taxes to maintenance. A good home inspection will highlight potential repairs and maintenance issues, and Bankrate says prospective buyers should make sure they're considering factoring all the costs associated with the house before buying. Now, given maintenance and hidden costs, you want to factor those in the annual cost of home ownership. Maybe talk to a financial professional, Chesley. And also, I know you guys are not immune from hurricane season. And, you know, I learned that when I was in Florida. Usually, you know, flood damage is not even covered there. You need a separate policy.
That's absolutely right. Now, I understand that Walmart is looking for cake decorators.
I tell you what, they get paid a lot. The Army of Decorators earn about $19.25 an hour on average, according to the Associated Press. So after managers, that makes decorators the highest paid hourly workers at a typical Walmart. One decorator profile is making more than $24 an hour after 11 years with Walmart. They've got 6,000 employees trained to hand decorate cakes. With school graduations right around now, this makes it its busiest time of the year. And Chesley, I'm going to leave you with this. You don't know it yet, but I bake for my TV family.
Is that right?
And come Christmas time, you will be part of the Maribel experience of the chocolate chip cookies.
Hey.
They only come to my family.
That's what I'm talking about. All right. Very good. Very good. If things don't work out, maybe that job at Walmart may do you good.
Hey.
Maribel, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate that. All right, folks. Plenty more ahead. Don't you go anywhere. This is The Take. We're back right after this. All right, welcome back to the show. Earlier this month, the Federal Reserve put out its Beige Book, which said that the nation's economy was cooling off just a little bit, but Metro Atlanta and this part of the country seems to be bucking that broader national trend. Joining us now is Dr. Jerry Parrish, Chief Economist at the Metro Atlanta Chamber. Jerry, thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right, so what is driving Metro Atlanta's continued economic growth while other parts of the region seem to be going down?
Well, one of the things we've got here is we've got a great workforce, we've got a great airport, and you know, for an organization like ours, which is responsible for recruiting companies from other states and other countries, this Atlanta airport we have, having all those direct flights, is actually a big draw. But it's also a great place to do business. You know, I think 11 years in a row, Georgia's been named the best state for doing business. So those companies are still choosing Georgia, and a lot of them end up here in Atlanta.
Is there a specific sector that's leading that momentum, like housing, logistics, or tech?
Actually, the majority of what we see, the first question being now is workforce. You know, do you have a trained workforce? Do you have a diverse workforce? And certainly with all the great universities we have, all the great technical schools we have here, that's a big draw for those companies to come here.
What you mentioned the workforce. So what's happening here in Atlanta that we're maintaining that workforce stability while others are seem to be going flat on it?
Well, it's not just the workforce, but you know, Georgia wins awards for its workforce development, and so that has been the #1 draw for companies. You know, it used to be, you know, can you have a location, or the taxes super low, those kind of things, but really is the workforce is what's drawing. You know, having those graduates come out of our great universities, certainly the tech companies really look at Georgia Tech as one of the big things. But you know, we've seen all kinds of companies, and especially the international companies now, really paying attention to Atlanta.
Dr. Parrish, I got to think that the price pressures and the tariff-related costs have played some kind of a role in this. What impact is it having on Atlanta businesses that it's not happening elsewhere in the country?
Well, it is the same for a lot of reasons. Certainly the amount of uncertainty right now. Businesses tell me they can't plan. I visited with a CEO a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I don't care what the tariff rate is. I just need to know what it is, you know, for me bringing in stuff into the country, and I need to know what it is for those countries that I'm, you know, exporting to. And so a lot of companies are sitting there waiting on making those major investments once we reduce the uncertainty, where they kind of feel comfortable with what it's gonna look like going forward.
I think we saw a slight uptick in housing and transportation activity here in the Southeast. How much of that strengthens or anchors here in the Atlanta market itself?
That's really big. Certainly one of the next questions we get after workforce is, you know, how about housing costs? You know, where are my folks gonna live? How are they gonna get to work? But you know, the thing that makes Atlanta very resilient is the number of headquarters that we have here. You know, a lot of decisions are being made here for, you know, for those companies, for not just in America, but for all over the world. And, having the stable amount of those headquarter companies here has really been a big draw, because a lot of companies want to be near them because they're selling stuff to them.
Mm-hmm. Looking ahead, real quickly, last question here. Looking ahead, is there any risk that we should be looking out for going forward?
Well, just the risk of uncertainty. I think businesses are ready to invest. They just we need to reduce the uncertainty. Most of it's tariffs right now. Mm-hmm. Certainly interest rates are going to be an issue as well when we think about that. But until the tariff issues get solved, you won't see the Federal Reserve do anything, in my opinion. So we won't see a change in interest rates until we get more clarity on the tariff situation.
Well, let's hope it still bodes well for us. Whatever it is we're doing, we're going to keep on doing it, right?
Yeah, well, Atlanta's proven to be a great place to live. I'm new to Atlanta as of a couple of years ago. Honestly, at my age, I had no intention of moving, but there's a lot of exciting stuff happening here that I wanted to be a part of, and a lot of businesses feel the same way.
Well, Dr. Jerry Parrish, welcome home, my friend. Thanks for joining us. All right, appreciate you. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. My final take coming up right after the break. We are looking at scattered showers and thunderstorms popping up once again this afternoon. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center has just placed us under a level 1 threat for severe weather. That's a marginal risk, which just means isolated strong severe thunderstorms are possible. I don't know that we'll see a whole lot of that. We will get some scattered showers in thanks to the daytime heating. 86 will be our afternoon high temperature, but this pattern will stick around right on through the weekend and into next week, as you can see. 87 degrees for the high on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a 40 to 50% chance for scattered showers. This will be mainly during the afternoons, and they may stretch into the evening, maybe even into the overnight. So when you wake up in the morning, there may be a lingering shower if you get up as early as I do. But during the mid-morning and afternoon, we should have that dry time. So if you're planning anything outside, that's the time to do it. We'll finally start to dry it out just a little bit as we head into the middle of next week. We're looking at Wednesday. Well, actually Tuesday with a 30% chance, Wednesday a 20% chance, and those temperatures will start to go up with the lower threats for the rain, up to 90 by Wednesday. All right, my final take here is from the files of how did you get away with that? 35-year-old Tyron Alexander was finally arrested after claiming to be a flight attendant for, get this, 6 years. During that time, he managed to book over 120 free flights. Between 2018 and 2024, Tyron posed as a flight attendant for multiple major U.S. airlines. How did he get access? How did he do that? Well, he got access to websites that were reserved for flight crews, and he booked free flights using the employee benefit numbers and also created fake badges with fake hiring dates. Pretty scary from my perspective. Fortunately, he only wanted to fly for free and not disrupt those flights. For 6 years, he got away with this. For 6 years, nobody even noticed. So he must have been good at it, right? Perhaps instead of pressing charges, maybe one of these airlines should have hired him and made him legit. I'm just saying, we've had backups. We've had issues. If you're good at something, you may want to hire the guy. Make him legit. Wow. That's all we got for you today, folks. Boy, try to make it a good one out there and try to encourage someone to do things legitly. Pat them on the back. Tell them they're doing a good job. I could use some of that. We'll see you.